We'll go ahead then, and we'll officially call the meetings to order. And looking forward to our start. Dr. Kraft.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask the trustees to join me in front of the dais. We've got one special recognition, and I'm going to brag just a little bit, introduce our student athlete this evening, and then we'd like to present him a small token of appreciation and award. If you'll join me, please. Okay, well, again, good evening, and as mentioned, we have a really special recognition. May 28th is going to serve as our really larger board recognition, especially for a lot of our state qualifiers here, especially with spring sports. But this one in particular, we wanted to recognize. He won't be able to join us on the 28th, and so we wanted to make a special exception, and I think you'll understand and appreciate why. Evan Crowley is a senior at Clark High School. He is also the 2024 state champion in the 50-yard freestyle, making him the fastest individual in state meet history at Clark High School. So he is the state record holder. That's one accolade. There are several others. He's also a 3-time state bronze medalist. So that, if I'm not mistaken, would put you at the state meet probably beginning your freshman year? Yes, sir. Wow. Just doing quick math. That's dangerous. Thanks for throwing me that bone, Evan. Appreciate it. 6-time region, 7 gold medalist, 11-time district gold medalist, 12-time Clark record holder, 9-time Northside district record holder, 4-year state qualifier, and Texas Interscholastic League Swimming Coaches Association All-State Award recipient, the San Antonio Express News Male Swimmer of the Year in 2023, Academic All-American Award from the National Interscholastic Swim Coaches Association, 10-time All-American Swimmer from the National Interscholastic Swim Coaches Association, Super Elite team for swimming in 2023 and 2024 from the Texas High School Coaches Association, Academic All-State Elite team from the Texas High School Coaches Association, a 2024 Water Polo District 26 MVP, Most Valuable Player, Super Elite team for Water Polo in 2024 from the Texas High School Coaches Association, and Evan plans to attend Harvard University this fall and swim for them. So there are likely many, many more records in store for Evan. He is joined this evening by his coach, Jeffrey Segrist, as well as Principal Steve Zimmerman. I saw Mr. Zimmerman, and I believe his mother, Miss Crowley. So thank you again for your continued support. Evan, if you will now join me, we'd like to, like I say, extend our appreciation and congratulations. We know you're going to go on and do great things.
Yes, Mom's going to come up here. Okay. We're moving the podium. Thank you so much.
He's also on your senior forum.
And on our advisory committee. Yep. Awesome voice. You can stick around if you want to.
Keep on going. All right. It's always good to do the recognitions. Let me, before we turn over to our facilities and operations side of the house, first, each and one of you definitely a special guest that we have here. But I do want to at least name one, and that's going to be our newest trustee that's coming up in about another 2 weeks. And Homer, thanks for attending, and we'll see you up here in a couple of weeks. So, thank you. All right, and Dr. Kraft, I think we're ready for facilities and operations.
Yes, sir. We needed to bring this item to you as we're in anticipation of completing the scoreboard, video board projects at both Gustafson and Ferris stadiums over the course of the summer months in preparation for the 2024 season. So I'll let Leroy San Miguel take it from here.
So this particular item before you is for a change order to the existing contract. As you know, when we decided to move forward with the video boards, we moved very, very fast. We bid this literally over the winter break and getting ready because timing was a very, very critical component of getting it done. And so we submitted all the paperwork, everything out, was moving pretty fast. We bid the project out, got a contractor. Then shortly thereafter, we had a conversation with CPS, and we were getting ready to put 2 services, completely independent services, to power up the video boards. And CPS pretty much told us, I think you can do it with the existing. However, you're going to have to make changes. And so upgrade the transformers and things of that nature. As a result of all of that, there were changes that were necessary to make this all work. So we went back to the contractor and negotiated a cost to be able to get these boards fired up, so to speak. And again, it's time sensitive, so that's why we're here at the special call meeting. We didn't get a chance to talk at the building committee simply because of the timing. So this agenda item is for a change order for $80,000 to the contractor of Central Electric that the board had previously awarded a contract to literally put power to both boards at Ferris and at Gus.
All right, everybody sort of, any questions or comments? Okay.
Is this your last report?
No, I'll be here next month.
Yeah, or next
Unless
2
I win
weeks.
the lotto, then it may not be.
Yeah, we do. This one is scheduled for, yeah, we do. Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Saldana.
I move that we approve the recommendation that Leroy has brought us regarding the electrical upgrades for our video boards.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. Anything further? Trustee Durrell, you're just hitting your button to be second. Okay, or to mess with me. Okay. Been moved and second. Is there any further discussion? All right, it's been moved and second that we approve the change order as presented. All those in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're ready for business and finance area.
Yes, sir. I believe we're going to kick off and discuss budget amendment number 3, which is, you'll see, is reflective of the 5th 6 weeks attendance / average daily attendance, the local tax collection update, and we also need to talk through a payroll accrual as a result of us moving the start of the school year back a week. It's really more of a function of the audit, but we did want to go ahead and bring that to your attention as well. So I'll turn it over to Renee Barajas, and we'll talk through, say, this 3rd budget amendment.
Okay, well, we will discuss general fund. There are no proposed changes to the debt service fund or child nutrition, the other 2 funds that the board approves every year. We'll talk about the changes to revenue, changes to expenditures, and what that has done to our estimated deficit for the 23-24 year. So we'll start with local tax revenue. So what the chart is showing you is, and I don't think we've shown this to the board, we've been using this analysis for the last several years, and the line at the bottom represents what we call the most likely estimate of what our taxable values are going to be. Taxable values. Now, every July, by the 25th of July, we are the appraisal districts are required to send us that next year's certified values, but we don't use those to build the budget around because they're too high. Because by July, there are still a lot of protests that have not been rectified. So for instance, last year in July of 23, when we received our certified values, This is for Bear County. There was $70 billion that had gone through the appraisal review board. So that was essentially anybody who didn't protest or their protest was settled, and that's what we get in July. But there was $6 billion that was still under protest. So you can't rely on that because you could get 80 cents on the dollar for whatever the value is that eventually will go onto your taxable roll. So they shouldn't use that number that you receive in July to build your budget around for local tax collection. So we come up with a number that we think is going to be more reflective of what our taxable values are actually going to be throughout the year, and that's that orange line at the bottom. Now, as you can see, the green line, if that is green, Jake, starts to go down as we receive supplements. And usually about the first of the month, we receive a supplement from Bear County saying, this is what we have gone through as far as the appraisal review board. This is what's come off of the ARB and onto your rolls. And you can see that that number goes nowhere but down. Now, this is an unusual year because what you see in October, that precipitous drop, that was when the appraisal district finally recognized the over 65 value loss. And if you remember, I think there was, Senate Bill 12, that's what I was thinking. The over 65 value loss. Essentially, what happened is, since 2019, under House Bill 3, all of the tax rate compression on the M&O side, the people who had their taxes frozen, school taxes frozen, were not benefiting from all of this compression, right? Because their taxes were frozen before 2019. So if any ISD taxpayer had their taxes frozen at $1,500 to anywhere ISD, and that's what they've been paying to that district year after year since 2019, 2020, 2021. Well, around them, people were paying less in taxes because of the increase in the homestead exemption and also because of the compression of the tax rate. Well, there was a bill, Senate Bill 12, that said, appraisal districts, you have to go in and calculate what that taxpayer actually would have been paying had they benefited from the tax rate compression, the MCR. So that's that drop that we received in October. It took appraisal districts that long to figure out how to do this calculation, so we saw that drop. Normally you don't see it. It's kind of a slope that goes all the way down and meets our most likely estimate. So taking that into account, we have to then decrease our expected tax collections by about $4.5 million. So that's the majority of, in fact, that's all the drop on our local tax collections. We're still estimating our collection rate to be about 99%. Northside ISD taxpayers pay their taxes, so we budget around 99%. I'll stop there if there are any questions on that issue. Moving on to state revenue, we're recognizing a $7.3 million decrease in expected state aid because, as you can tell, here's another chart that shows that line at the top is what we built the budget around, 94,200 refined ADA. And you can see the line that's going down, that is the cumulative ADA after all of the different 6-week periods. So we were able to incorporate the fifth 6 weeks, the penultimate 6 weeks, at 93,209. So we have to recognize the fact that we're not going to get state aid around 94,200. But refined ADA is not the only variable that generates funding, because you also have comp ed, you have special education, you have all these other student counts. You put those all into the mix, and this is what we expect to get about a $7.3 million decrease in our state aid, simply because the number of students. In this case, refined ADA and some other issues. On the other side of the coin, the expenditures, as the superintendent mentioned, we are recognizing a $14.8 million accrual this year because the people are starting earlier during the month of August, and we have to record when that expense is incurred. So our fiscal year ends August 31st, but we start the school year sooner, so we have to recognize those expenditures during the month of August. So normally it's a routine accounting entry where you reverse last year's accrual and you book this year's. Well, this year's accrual, because we're starting earlier, is $14 million. There were a couple of other issues, maintenance supplies of about $1.5 million, but nonetheless, when you put that all into the mix, it takes our estimated budget deficit from the 50 that we showed in budget amendment number 2 to about $78 million is where we are now.
Trustee Saldana?
Dr. Barajas, since we're going to be starting early, like the middle of August, right? Somewhere around there. Does it mean that new teachers have to wait 6 weeks for a paycheck?
No.
All of September, they'll get paid at the end of August also?
They get paid in, we are doing the 13th check in August, and then once, we talked about this, that normally a teacher would get their first paycheck in September. We're gonna rectify that, and it'll be in August, this, because they're starting so much earlier. Yeah, they're not gonna have to wait those many, many weeks, from the time they start working to the time they get their first check.
Thank you.
So again, you've seen this before. One of the things that we are attempting to do and have is that we are budgeting tighter and tighter and tighter. So we are looking at what predicted expenses do we want to include in the budgets that we have the board consider for approval. But at the end of the year, we have to ensure, because there's a lot of movement within $1 billion budget. So what we want to make sure is that the budget, the final amended budget, is big enough to incorporate any unforeseen expenditures that that's that outside line, and the inside line cannot cross the outside line. That's verboten. We don't do that, right? We always want to make sure that we only spend within what the board has authorized us. So there is a little difference between the two, but it's not as big as it's used to be. So we call it sweep around here, or fallout, or whatever the term may be. So what that does is, as somebody that I work with pointed out, is as you're budgeting tighter and tighter and tighter, a thing like a $14 million accrual in a $1 billion budget is really just almost rounding. But when you're budgeting so tightly, it kind of exposes itself. So going from 50 to 78, again, on a $1 billion budget is really not that huge of a swing. But when you are talking about a $1 billion budget, it does expose it going from 50 to 78. Of course, if it were the other way, if it was in the black, that's different. But these are the kinds of things that probably have been happening in the past. It's just they were masked because there were budgeted expenditures that would take up that excess. But we are budgeting so tightly that when things like this happen, and it won't happen again next year, because we're going to go ahead and build into the 24-25 budget our expected accrual, so you won't see this next August, right? All right. Okay, correct. Okay, thank you. So anyway, that is budget amendment number 3. Anything that we learn between now and probably late July or early August will be incorporated into budget amendment number 4. It's my understanding that the district does plan to apply for waivers for those 2 days that currently are not reflected in this ADA number. Should TEA grant us that waiver, that would push that number up a bit and reduce the deficit ever so slightly.
Yeah, if you recall, we had the day of the eclipse, but then also we had a really cold weather day where I believe were well below freezing, and there was a chance for precipitation that didn't ever come to fruition. Also, just to back up just a minute, we won't recognize this again next year in our budget planning efforts, even though, as a reminder, with the 2-year adoption of the calendar, we'll be backing up again a week, and so it will put us at a start date of right at the mid-August. This upcoming year, we'll be starting school the 3rd week of August. But bringing staff back, it obviously has that dominoing effect of bringing them back a week early, or in some cases even maybe a little bit more so than what they're accustomed.
Okay. And again, this one is potentially scheduled for action if the board so chooses. This would allow for amending the 23-24 budget. Is there a motion to come before the board? Trustee Freeman?
I move approval.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. If not, move to second that we amend the 23-24 budget as presented. All those in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, good. Motion carries. All right. And now the next one, I'll let the board know. The next one is for information purposes. So not scheduled for action, but for information.
Yes, sir. So in a recent policy committee, there were some questions that were really pointed but also very astute as to just what does the special education funding What are the logistics? What is the vehicle? How does it flow ultimately to the district? So we wanted to spend just a few minutes in circling back, trying to answer those questions with a little bit more detail, and then you may have some other questions in regards to, especially what we use to supplement using general fund for special education services as a result, really, of the underfunding of $2 billion that's been mentioned and reported on across the state of Texas that we don't receive in our entitlement. So I'll let Renee and Tiffany take it from here.
In a previous board meeting, we showed you the amount of funding we received in relation to what we spend, both for state allotments and also for the federal allotment, but we didn't go into the kind of the detail about how the state allotment is generated, so we're going to go through that. We'll go through the state, we'll go through the federal grants that we receive for special education services, and then talk about, again, special education spending, but with a more brief overview of the last 2 years of what we spent. So the state education allotment is based on 12 instructional arrangements. All of them are based on weights. So every 2 years when the legislature meets, sometimes they change the weight, sometimes they add a weight, like with dyslexia. And these are based on full-time equivalents, except for one, mainstream ADA. That's the only one that is based on ADA. They're all rooted to the basic allotment, and we talk about the basic allotment all the time. So basic allotment increases, guess what? We get more special ed funding because there's a weighted funding tied to the basic allotment of $6,160 currently. So here are the weights, and these are all of the instructional arrangements. Somebody in a different area than in finance will determine that these students are receiving services in one or multiple of these different instructional arrangements. And that goes in, I guess that goes into the SIS system, because this is what we report to the state. That we put these children in, or they were receiving instructional arrangement services in one of these 12 areas. And you can see the weight 5.0 all the way down to 1.15. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean a weight? Sometimes, we used to talk a lot about weighted ADA, WADA, if you remember that. That was in relation to whether or not you were a district that was a property wealthy district. How much per WADA are you worth? And then you'd have to send money back to the state. And as Amanda Brownson from TASBO said it well, the WADA is no longer a construct that is used to determine whether or not we are wealthy or not. That's a whole different issue. But we still use WADA for Tier 2 funding and other kinds of things. And this is where it all comes from, because every instructional arrangement outside of special education and special education is a weighted funding. So that's why we talk about weighted ADA. So let's start with the last one, which is mainstream ADA 1.15. Let's just go through the math and explain what that means exactly. So the basic allotment, as we said, is $6,160. The mainstream weight is 1.15. Well, you just do simple math and multiply that, and you get 7,084. So you essentially have a new mainstream basic allotment for one student who is ADA in mainstream ADA. So if you take 6,084.285, that's what in a template that we used, I think it was back in October, that's what we were using for our estimated ADA for mainstream special education. You take 6,084, multiply it times 7,084 per ADA, for a grand total of $43.1 million, which happens to be the largest allotment of any of those weights that I showed you earlier. So that's how the math works, and we can verify that. We go through that. You enter your numbers and outspits how much you are expected to get based on these estimates of your own for the students who we're going to serve. Now, TEA has their own estimates of who they think we're going to serve, which is why at the beginning of the year, if you were to look at what TEA is estimating we are going to receive in state aid, it's usually too high because their numbers are wrong. So we use our own numbers to build the budget around. And then they usually finally get better numbers sometime in January or February where they start to get closer to what we think we're going to get. So if any board member wants to go look at our summary of finance at the beginning of a school year, be warned that those numbers are completely wrong, because TEA doesn't know our numbers the way we know our numbers. So if you take, again, the weights all the way down and look at the FTE/ADA, again, ADA is only for mainstream, and then do the simple math that we did over here, our allotment would be just under $100 million based on all of those estimated FTEs and ADA. And that changes throughout the year as we get information from student information system. So we build a budget around some numbers, and as we see those numbers changing because there's something that's happening on the curriculum side where they are moving kids around to these different instructional arrangements, we have to react to that and say whether or not we are still in the ballpark to receive approximately $100 million in special education funding.
Yeah, Trustee Freeman?
Yes, so the total, well, we don't have here total allotments after, I see that, I see the allotments. The total ADA that we have, including mainstream and everything else, is how many?
The total ADA?
FTE/ADA?
Right, well, each of those has its own FTE except for the last one in mainstream ADA.
Okay, so some of these are multiples of each, they're not single.
Each one is
Right.
single. Each one stands on its own. So, for instance, you could have a student who, for a portion of the year, received speech therapy services, and for that amount of time that child received speech therapy services, it would contribute 0.25 of an FTE. So they could be in multiple, but the time served, then just like we do with full-time equivalents on the personnel side, it's the same concept. How long did that student receive those services in one of these? And they all contribute to whether or not that equated to one FTE.
Okay, in one of them, so they can't be in two different.
They can,
Oh,
sure.
They can do blended.
Yeah,
Okay.
depending on what kind of services they're receiving.
Okay.
And then
that
when a
was my
student,
question.
I think, is exited from one of these and put into mainstream ADA, then they're in that ADA. That's why that ADA is only ADA. All the rest of them are full-time equivalents.
Okay.
So it's a lot of coding of kids and the services they're receiving for us to be able to capture, and we report to the state that these are the kids that we serviced, these are the weights, this is the funding you're going to receive based on who you serviced.
Thank you.
Trustee Saldana?
Is this, was that the section where the state gave us one set of directions and then the federal government penalized us and we had to return those $20 million? Is this part of what happened in this?
It's in the realm, but not specifically. We're talking about this in isolation just from the state funding perspective, but the people who are providing those services to those students when they are done on the random moment, is that right? Random moment time study. What were you doing at that time when you get that email? You know, what were you doing at 10:15 and you have to then answer what you were doing? So again, it goes back to what they were saying they were doing was instructional and not medical.
Medically related.
Yeah, so,
That was really the differential is what we were being instructed to code for reimbursement purposes probably did include some instructional activity, but those were our instructions. Well, that was no longer an allowable reimbursable expense, and so that was the major change with SHAR's reimbursement.
So if we were to, for instance, down the road, determine that all the work that our staff does to have to answer these random moment time studies, to tell what they were doing at the time, if the funding, starts to just come to a trickle, it's $1 million now compared to what we used to receive, we're still going to be doing all these services for our students, and we're still going to get state funding. The issue then becomes, is it worth the squeeze to get $1 million from the feds to have our staff have to, be selected and tell exactly what you were doing at that time? Could we supplement it some other way? When we were getting the bigger dollars, yes, it was certainly, worth it for staff to answer those random moment time studies, and that way we could generate that kind of funding. But if funding changes drastically, it could be that it's no longer worth it for our staff. Again, we're still going to be providing all of these services regardless, because the state is funding it. And then we jump to the federal side regarding what we receive from the federal government through Texas, and there are 3 grants that we receive: IDEA B formula, IDEA B discretionary, and IDEA B preschool. For the grant year that we're currently in, 2023-24, you can see the dollar amounts, and those dollar amounts are pretty consistent. I think over the IDEA B formula is usually about $20 million, I think, and the other 2 you can tell are nowhere near the bigger one. But that's what we get from the feds that we normally get every year. It's kind of corollary to what we get on the title side, but it's under the IDEA program, Individuals with Disability Education Act.
And you had Trustee Duran?
I just had a question. If there were to be an error with the labels that kids get, that there was a mistake, how far back can we recollect that, or we lose it? The
I
coding
know
error.
that they will come in and do an audit every year of the data we submit through PEEMS. And I haven't seen one for Northside, whether or not, what kind of changes they make. In other districts I've been in, I've seen where the changes are very, very modest, depending on what they determined. We're gonna change the ADA for students who are pregnant or something, or whatever it happens to be, but I've not seen, in recent memory, any issues with these numbers that we were reporting to the state. And for them to come in and do an audit, to be quite honest, I don't even know if TEA has the staff to come in and audit every single school district who are reporting all of this data to the state. So it behooves any district to make sure that if you are providing services to a student, that we code it correctly, because otherwise we won't receive the funding.
We would lose it if we didn't code it.
Yeah, to be quite, I don't know if there's a statute of limitations where we can go back X number of years and say, we did provide the services, but we didn't code it correctly, so I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Freeman?
Yes, so we talk about teachers, recording services, which you just said regarding that. Tell me, so we do work with TASB, and they help us with filing for SHARS reimbursement, is that correct?
Yes.
So, but we're doing the work, so what does TASB do? Just tell me how that works out. How does that partnership
I'm gonna have to,
work?
yeah.
So we basically pay TASB for their software application that is used to process all of those billings to TMHP, the Texas Medicaid Health, and I forgot the last one, but to TMHP. And so we use the software and also their training, their services that they provide, because they'll actually come on campus and train those areas that we get, that we do direct medical with. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. And so it's their software, their training, resources, they have webinars, and they've kept their rate the same for years.
Thanks for that clarification. I was trying to figure out how that relationship, thank you.
Of course.
And then on that other one, on the trustee Freeman question, I'm still trying to figure out her first question on the total. If I add it up right, tell me if I'm wrong, it's a little less than 9,000 FTE ADEs if you add everything up. I know it's not, I know some maybe overlap, et cetera. Is that correct? And that's about 10, 11% of what we have as a student body?
Well, again, remember, the anything other than mainstream ADA is really, again, a student could be in
I know.
multiple. So you can't add it up and get a number that means anything. In the same way you could do with other ADAs,
You could have one.
Oh, I know,
kid,
but still.
right?
So you can't count that kid 3 times.
Yeah.
To answer your question, we have over 17,000 identified students that are being served with some form of an IEP or special education.
Oh, so we're almost at 20% now?
A little over 17%. Yes, sir.
Okay, I did not realize that. Okay, thank you. That does it. Thank you. Trustee Duran? Oh, no one? Who? I heard somebody say. Trustee Harrell, whose light's not working?
Oh,
Oh, my bad. Never mind. It's a button thing. Good point. Trustee Harrell.
So that kind of was my question. I know we had a report that said the 2 fastest growing populations in Northside are special ed and then also our recent immigrants, right? Our newcomers, emergent.
Emergent bilingual,
Thank you. Emergent
bilingual services.
Thank you.
Those are our 2
So this is,
percentage-wise.
so this was reflected on 17,000, right? Or what, were we less?
Well, keep in mind, we identify students throughout the course of the year. So no, I believe that these numbers were run probably as a result of
Like even the year before?
snapshot data, the date.
Well, this is from a
October?
funding template from February, so this is,
okay.
so
Yeah, so it's lagging.
Okay.
It is.
We, just the past 2 months, we've identified and started serving over 400 students. Additional students.
Well, I was just thinking and planning for next year.
you,
Woof.
you take the best information, just let's go back to ADA. So we saw that chart that showed ADA, refined ADA going down. So does that tell us anything? Does it tell us that, well, you better start next year, 24-25, with an ADA lower than 94,200? Certainly you would think, well, logic dictates that we probably, unless all of a sudden on the first day of school, all these kids show up and then we under budgeted for ADA and then we would make that adjustment in BA number 1. So you have to look at what history tells you what's happening. Sometimes you go and talk to the people who are the program people and say, are you doing anything different? Do you have plans to take kids out of one of these instructional arrangements and mainstream them? That's the term that is used.
Right.
If so, then you may step back and think, well, I'm going to go ahead and adjust all my numbers because, again, it's a guess. You just don't know. As the superintendent pointed out, it's very fluid. The emergent bilingual, all of a sudden newcomers come in and then the numbers are changing, which is every 6-week period. We get numbers from SIS and we compare them to what we built the budget around, and then we have to make adjustments all the way through. And the first time we really have enough data to make an adjustment is usually in BA number 2, which is in February, to see whether or not we're going to hit any of the estimated ADA or FTE targets that we put together when the budget was adopted in August. So,
And it just seems like it's a little more unpredictable because of the rapid growth in those two areas than ever before. I'm just,
yeah.
so, because I don't remember that kind of growth in years past. The other question, does this also reflect 504 or only special ed?
It's, well, I don't know if 504 would be considered, but
Two different.
They are.
504 has been added to special.
Well, that's what I was wondering, for funding purposes.
well, you see those, if a student is placed into one of those instructional arrangements,
So-
that is funding. I didn't see 504
Okay,
up
so
there.
well, speech sometimes is 504. So that's what I'm
Dyslexia.
wondering, or resource room, but, so that might be just something we can follow up on. And then, I had one other question about that list. Tell me off-home campus, what is that? Is that a placement of a child at home that receives services?
When it comes to the programmatic side, that I am outside
Okay.
of my lane, yeah.
We can find out. I mean, I'm just curious what that support looks like. Okay, thanks.
So you saw the same data, but for a couple of more years regarding state allotment, what we spent, and the difference. So as you can, and of course, this year's not over. So if you look at 23-24, you see a $23 million positive balance. Well, the year's not over yet, and we are going to spend more than what we receive from the state because some could argue, well, they're not sending you enough. If you want to use that argument, by how much? Well, it looks like by $30 million. That's in every school district. I mean, so how do you cover that? Well, you get state allotments based on the number of students you are servicing. You have to spend 55% of what you receive on those students' spending requirements. There are other funding that you receive that is not tied to anything. You have to use those dollars to supplement this program and others. If you look up what's happening on the federal side, and that federal allotment includes the 3 grants that I showed you earlier, formula, preschool, and discretionary. There is some variability there as far as you see the difference, and sometimes that's rolled forwarded for the next year. So it's not like you're leaving money on the table, you get to roll it forward to the next year. So that's what we've seen over the last couple of years, and I think this year there are plans to go ahead and code things to the federal pot of money to give some relief to the general fund. Since we're spending way more than what we receive from the state, we'll leverage those federal dollars and just do a recoding of expenditures into the federal grant.
Okay. Yeah, this was the last slide. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Trustee Harrell?
So if we're recoding that to the federal budget, what is that, what was that money possibly going to be used for?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah, but it's money that is available for us to take an expenditure that is currently on the general fund's books, and we simply take it and move it over to the federal side. And it's allowable for us to code that to, as if we had used it from the beginning to use a federal dollar, and it gives relief to the general fund, so we can utilize those dollars up to a certain point. If they have a plan for the money going forward, then we have to also take that into account to not use the entire roll forward amount. But you see this in title funds as well.
right.
And most of that
It's okay, we can hear you.
most of that unspent money is payroll budget, because we don't, we budget for the whole position, for every position that's in the grant. And so any vacancies that existed in those grant-funded positions that would be the unspent money as well. Not the entire amount, but I mean, a good portion of it.
Okay,
All right, thanks.
Trustee Freeman?
Yeah, you said something about, rollover. So all of, does this money stay with us? Do we have to?
Yes.
Okay, so we could still use it, and we would use the older money first, right?
Yeah,
The
I guess you could.
Excess a couple years ago, then we would use that money first.
It's the money is fungible, so it's not as if you could say it's first in, first out, right? That dollar we're using is from. We don't do it that way. It goes into, so your initial planning estimate is some dollar amount. You rather roll forward and then you build your program around that. So it's not as though you have it separate and you're saying we're using that dollar first. You just.
But you didn't roll it up. I mean, so if you're rolling it over, then
Right.
we should have just one line item.
Well, you're rolling it forward, but you don't sequester those dollars and say, we're gonna use that dollar first because it just becomes part
Okay.
of the grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I vaguely see that. Maybe we have to have it.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a little foggy. A later conversation.
Thank you for doing this.
Appreciate it.
yeah. It's good, okay. This was one, again, was for information, so, yeah, it really was valuable information, so appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
This is one our community should hear about too, so it's good information to understand that, so thank you.
And like I say, I know there were some questions, particularly as we're building the upcoming fiscal year budget. Just to preview, the next meeting, we'll plan on bringing in G&I packages and then also compensation recommendation. It's already that time of the year, being the end of May. So more to come with the building of fiscal year 25 budget.
Good. All right, that takes us over, out of our budget area, takes us over to the superintendent area. We start out from last month with our Board of Trustees continuing education credits.
Yes, sir. So as we discussed at the last meeting, precisely, I know that Monica's been able to update the continuing education professional credits hours, and so I believe you will find that report in your board docs for the annual reporting purpose.
Oh,
Trustee Freeman, sorry.
So this
how
is a
did you
different.
look at me?
I did, because I saw you push it, then I looked at the lights.
So this attachment is, I didn't open it before this meeting because I thought it was going to reflect, Bobby, what you had passed us at one time for review to look at. So what I see here is that if we look on the column for team building,
Oh, let me talk.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Explain that
Thank
one.
you. That way we don't have any misinformation
that was my
whatsoever
question,
that's
too.
quoted.
Thank you.
Okay, good. We will handle that. So everybody has completed the team building session. Just because of the way the algorithm or something works,
I can
go ahead.
Okay, so I reached out to continuing education, and she explained that every May 1, it resets. So we've already done ours for 23, 24. This is now going to be for 24, 25. That's why it shows incomplete as of right now. We are complete for the current year.
The challenge with that is that
What's
this is I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
But, okay, so I understand the May 1st, but the challenge with that is that we show up incomplete, and it could become, and
We-
it's,
Technically, we don't show up incomplete for this one because we have May 1 to April of 2025 to get that done. The report in April showed complete, but since it's been reset for May 1, that's why.
so that is why none of us have any hours at all on here.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So,
Was that that was never the intent, though, Mr. Blunt, regarding this reporting?
no, what I will do, just for the record's sake, I'll go ahead and, well, take out a couple of comments first, and I will officially announce our status.
Yeah,
As
and
of
we
that
can
time,
we can modify.
have
We
that
can
in the
we can
record.
create our own report that is probably a better reflection. We pulled this obviously from TASB.
Yeah, I get it.
But I'll officially announce. Trustee Harrell, and then,
And I just wonder if if we have an idea or an option or suggestion to TASB to make it more dynamic, so that it's not waiting to roll over, that it reflects status, like really it is complete.
Correct.
And so
Yeah.
that's just like, you know,
At the end of our April month,
Yeah.
we did all show
yeah.
complete on
So
that.
that's the weird part, that if it's more dynamic, it'll say complete until that deadline's gone, and then it would show incomplete versus wait
Right.
for. So I'm wondering if there's a suggestion I can make to TASB, and then we can talk about it, because,
Yeah, depending what I say.
depending,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, then wait till, let me explain. So I'll take the heat on that, okay?
Okay,
Okay, so remember I delayed this till May. Officially, this should have been done by April 30th. And that's what the reason's gonna be is, wait a minute, you're supposed to announce before April 30th.
okay,
So I'll take the heat.
you're fired.
So that's why. So that's why I
So
was,
no recommendation to TASB.
yeah, because May 1st, it would have started over if we would have
Okay,
announced.
They would have said, your president should have.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, you're
We're
fine.
good, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you for saying that too.
Trustee Duran?
Well, I also reached out to TASB to find out, because for new board members, there's some requirements, and there's some that show up for us that are not even on this list that we don't have to do. For example, like if we have a PIO officer, we don't have to do that continuing education credit that's gonna show on your transcript. So it's good for us to each individually email them, because they can tell you also that they don't provide some of that. They're not able to provide some of those trainings, so there's other vendors that we have to go to. So for the purposes of new trustees, I would just email them directly, Homer, and just say, where do I get what I need? Because I thought it was a one-stop shop, to be really honest with you, and it's not. So there's 3 things I had to go elsewhere to get, because TASB is not able to, should I restate that, provide that training. So good to learn, good learning experience.
Yeah, and related to that, I think we'll do a much better job too, because now that we sort of know how the tracking works, but also have something that identifies, like school safety. Okay, who actually has that? How do you get that to give options? So, yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'll make so this is where we stand. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, okay? So I showed, and I have to do it individually, so if y'all okay with that. So I know Trustee Saucedo had one more, the Intro to Texas Education Code, correct? So we're working towards that one. I think Trustee Duran, you said 3, but you had 2, right? Intro to
I just emailed
in the school safe. You good?
couple of certificates, and then I have a whole nother transcript from my other job where
Okay.
I get all of this CE stuff, so
Working
we could
through it.
probably all get a master's degree with those.
All right. Okay. So you're working through yours, but okay. Trustee Hall, you're complete. Don't worry about the team building one. Remember the story there. Trustee Saldana, you're now complete. I mean, I shouldn't say now. You're complete. Now, Trustee Lopez is incomplete on 3 areas, but this is no, just say he doesn't care. He always cares, but
It's still TASB over there.
yeah, he still got. He has 2 weeks to complete them before he leaves that position. Trustee Freeman, yours should show as complete now. All right, and then myself, Trustee Blunt, yours should show as complete. Okay, so that's our.
Sure you're complete.
You never know. So that's our official announcements for this, and then what we'll make sure for next year is that we have all that identified April 30th, and we get more support on some of these unique ones on where you actually get those. Okay, but the bottom line is, for the record, in case anybody's keeping that also, is this board continues to take training very seriously. You can tell by number of hours. We adhere to and believe in adhering to all the different requirements and other things that are there. And so we wanted to make sure everybody understood that. Trustee Harrell?
I was just gonna say to Homer, SLI in the summer, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you got that information, they do a really nice new trustee training that kind of takes you through it, and it makes better sense. And then you can say, oh, where would I get this training or this training kind of deal. So they'll make it interactive and help support you. And then just know you don't have to do it all at once. It looks like a lot, but chunk it, and you'll be okay.
Sounds good.
You'll be okay.
Looking forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're working on getting him all squared away for SLI.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's all a very good thing, Homer, without a doubt. All right? Okay. All right, so that completes that item. We'll go over to our next item.
Yes, sir. So as you recall, we've mentioned this past fall we had the opportunity to engage Qualtrics to do really a district-wide survey. So this was inclusive of parents, of staff, teachers, and students, third grade or older. And so we wanted to go ahead, now that we have the results refined, we have results that will be utilized particularly within departments and campus specific through the disaggregation of data. But we want to go ahead and provide an overview of, so I will argue, some really positive results and really positive takeaways from all three surveyed groups, just as to perception and data as to what we're really doing well and what are some potential growth opportunities. And so with us this evening, I mentioned Qualtrics. They're the facilitator of the survey, but Nick Cohn with Isobar is going to provide the analysis of this most recent survey and then try to answer any questions. Again, Nick, welcome to San Antonio. This is, I think, Nick's first time to visit San Antonio. So welcome, and we look forward to hear your report.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Kraft. Good evening, everyone. Thrilled to be here with all of you this evening. As Dr. Kraft said, my name is Nick Cohn. I'm an account manager with Isobar Public Sector. We are a research firm and technology firm, and we support in the implementation of the Qualtrics platform and also work to support districts around the country. I'm based in Southeast Wisconsin, spent a lot of time in Texas, but as Dr. Kraft said, this is my first time to San Antonio. And had, prior to this work, 20 years in K-12 ed. I served as a high school principal, director of teaching and learning, director of strategy, assistant superintendent. So I've overseen everything from HR and operations to finance to teaching and learning and everything in between, communications. I have been doing this work for about 2 years now and have had the opportunity over the last 8 months to engage with the administrative team here around the deployment of the stakeholder surveys and the results of which we're going to share with you this evening. In terms of the full report should be available to you in board docs. It sort of comprehensively takes you through all the details and methodology. I'm going to highlight for you this evening some of the main points, key points, and then address any questions you have. Certainly ask questions as you have them. I'm going to pause at a couple of key points, though, as we talk about the surveys.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee.
I'm sorry, mine does say connection to the server may have been lost, but is this in, I'm not seeing it in our board docs.
I don't have that. I don't have that attachment. I think it was just sent directly to Monica, but it's not connected.
Oh.
It's not attached to the board doc.
We can
Where?
We'll
Okay.
load it. We'll link it.
Thanks, so maybe in Friday letter or something, so we'll do it right now? Oh, okay, good, because, thank you, thanks. I make notes on this thing.
Of course,
while
yeah,
you're talking,
absolutely.
so thanks.
Okay.
No, it's okay, it's not that, it's not the server, even though it says that on my server, I think I'm okay, since there's no document, thanks.
All right, we're good. We'll catch up.
Great.
You're good.
So in terms of methodology, just some things to highlight and things to keep in mind. I always like to highlight sort of the approach we took and some of the key questions that we asked so that you know what you're looking at when you review the results and look at the report. Ultimately, these are the 4 areas that we care about when we're thinking about deployment of a survey. And all of that starts with our process of our Likert questions, which make up the bulk of the survey questions that we ask. These questions were designed in conjunction between Isobar, Qualtrics, and Northside, and so we worked together to develop those question sets. Within that space, we have to look at the scale. There's always a difference between a 4-point scale and 5-point scale. 4-point scale forces sentiment, forces you to agree or disagree. 5-point scale has a neutral midpoint, neither agree nor disagree. For the purpose of the surveys that we deployed to students, staff, and families, we picked the 5-point scale with that neutral midpoint. Why that's important is that when we talk about percent agreement, we're only talking about the top 2 boxes, right? Strongly agree and somewhat agree. And so you want to keep that in mind as you're looking at the results as we talk about the agreement pieces. That neutral midpoint is not considered to be agreement. Additionally, we use something called a key driver statement, which was used primarily in industry and moved into education about 10, 15 years ago. Net promoter statement or key driver statement is something like, how likely would you be to recommend the school district to a new family, to another student, or as a great place to work? Or we might ask something like, on an 11-point scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being not at all likely and 10 being very likely, how likely would you be to recommend, or how satisfied are you, right, with the experience that you're getting? We use this as an outcome metric, and then we can identify which other survey statements are most statistically significantly related to that outcome. That then is plotted on what's called a key driver chart or key driver analysis. In this case, it's drivers to the NPS. In other words, if I responded favorably to the NPS score, I would recommend, then we want to look to the green statements in the upper right as ones that were most important to those individuals. If, on the other hand, I did not recommend the district, we want to look to the red dots in the upper left quadrant as areas for improvement or areas that we want to hone in on. And so that will come back up in the results in a little bit. And then lastly, we did ask and offer some open-ended comments. So some questions about, tell us more about your experience. Where are our strengths? Where can we do better? From there, we did both a thematic analysis as Isobar and within the Qualtrics platform to identify themes, and I'll share the results of those themes with you this evening so that you see those. And so I'm going to move into the family survey first. I want to just sort of note response count, first of all, because when we look at family surveys in particular, I think we see lower response rates than we do with internal stakeholders. And so we always want to know what's valid and reliable. Is that enough? Are those enough responses? If you think to like presidential polling, if you hit the 1,100 response count, anything 1,100 and above has the same margin of error as any amount you get above that, right? So you really have to get to 1,100 responses for the data to be considered valid and reliable when you have a large sample. In this case, the family survey, we had over 6,400 respondents, and so very much in that space of valid and reliable, meaning we can project these results reasonably well out to the entire community with plus or minus 3% margin of error either way on those results. You can see the breakdown of questions here. It's important to note that there was a district set of questions that were responded to once, and there was a school-specific set of questions that could be responded to for every student that the parent or family member had in the district. Within that, there were two driver statements. One key driver statement focused on the district and one on schools. So the first one was, how likely would you be to recommend Northside ISD to someone new to the community? That's the left-hand chart. And then below that, overall on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 not at all satisfied, 10 being very satisfied, to what extent are you satisfied with and would recommend your child's school? And again, they could answer that one multiple times for each school they had a child enrolled. Those break down then into 3 boxes on the bottom. Promoter, which is a 9 or 10, so considered someone who's talking favorably about us. A passive, 7 and 8. Someone who's neutral, they're not talking favorably or unfavorably, they're sort of neutral. And then detractor, 0 through 6, someone who's actively talking negatively, potentially about the district, right? You can see those percentages there. That calculates into a score on a scale from -100 to +100. You take your percent promoters, subtract your percent detractors, and that gives you that score. Generally, anything above a 0 is considered to be good. You can see your percentages here are considered exceptional. In fact, you're well above the education benchmark in the US in terms of family perception of net promoter or key driver. These are really outstanding data and something to really be proud of. And when you look at the top 2 boxes in particular, 84%, 85% across that 7 through 10, again, exceptional, right? So room for growth, but very good. We want to focus on that 15, 16% and identify maybe what's happening there thematically. And then the 28% and 25%, they're close. And so what do we need to do to move the needle a little bit for those families, right? And give them just a little bit better experience. We also asked on the family survey about the strengths of the district. And so we gave them a list to choose from. We asked them to rank. And number 1 was the highest. This is the average, meaning the lower the score here, the more high that strength was ranked, right? And so the way you want to read this is the blue bars are the ones I would consider to be in the top tier for identified strengths. The yellow would be in that next tier down in terms of identified strengths. And so the top 4 or top 5 strengths within the district are listed there, starting with safe and secure learning environment and ending with clean and inviting facilities. And you can see that list there. We also asked families to weigh in on a variety of communication sources. And so we said, these are all the ways in which you can get information about the district and about the school. Which of these are useful to you? And they rated that on a 5-point scale from extremely useful to not at all useful. You can see, of course, as you look down that list, the ones that they identified as most useful. Again, I don't know there's any surprises here, right? If we've moved increasingly into a digital age for receiving media. These things stand out. What I would point to is the scores, regardless of where they rank, are still very favorable for the newsletter and the website. Typically, websites are lower in terms of receiving information just because they're a little difficult to navigate sometimes, and families are often critical of the website. In this particular case, responding fairly favorably, though I'm guessing that 31% that you're seeing in the gray probably does not visit the website regularly and therefore didn't feel like they had an opinion on it, right?
Okay. Trustee Harrell?
So real quick, only because I've had several people and mention that they miss that paper copy that we used to send out. There's still the population that gets a paper copy of the newspaper. Was there an opportunity for them to make a suggestion? I know that wasn't one of the choices because we were not doing it.
Yeah.
But was there an opportunity later on to say, I really want lessons back, or whatever we used to call it?
So certainly there was an opportunity for open-ended comments if they wanted to talk about communication. And
But I mean, after each question?
It
Was
wouldn't
at
have been
the
till the end. And the way it was rated was I identified out, like if you picked a particular sentiment about communication overall, what did you say? What were your comments? I didn't notice or identify comments about that. Hey, I'd love to go back to the paper version or anything like that. However, I would recommend like a more full-scale communications audit if you really wanted to dig into like some of
Okay.
those pieces.
All right, thanks.
I'm sorry, can you go back one real quick? I just want to see. So, okay, I was looking for extracurricular opportunities, but that threw me off. Okay. Thank you.
These were the district statements. Again, will be a little more legible in the full report when it's a little bit larger, but you can see them here. In terms of benchmarking, people always ask, what's the benchmark, right? What are we looking for? With the exception of the staff survey, we want a combined agreement percentage. So the blues, the darker blue and the lighter blue, we want those a combined percentage of about 70% or above on a 5-point scale. On the staff survey, we want to be at 80% or above, typically, in terms of benchmarking. And so that's what we want to look for. That's where we're sort of standing into. And you can see here that the statement's largely ahead of that, right, or above that 70% benchmark. You can see sort of the lower statements here, which are the ones we want to start to pay attention to, particularly if we see large chunks of negative, which we're not seeing here. We are seeing some expanded neutral. That gray bar is getting bigger, but the negative percentages are staying about the same, right? So that becomes a little less concerning. It just means that people felt a little more neutral or maybe didn't engage with that particular experience. And so again, very good scores across the board. Again, the lower two here, I'm happy with how the district addresses parent concerns, and then facilities, however, again, still very high. These are school-specific questions that were asked of families, again, rated by percent agreement. Again, we're looking for spikes in negatives, so the yellow boxes, again, you're not going to see them as you look down the line, which means at worst, people felt neutral. And again, if we're using that 70% benchmark, again, we're in very good space here, right, in terms of responses. The interesting part of this is when you look at the bottom two, teachers at this school provide a nurturing environment, the school supports social and emotional wellness. That's going to come out in the comments when we talk about the comments from families as well, and I'll point to that when we see that piece. And again, the last round of statements here in terms of school specific, you kind of see where that drops off. Now that middle bar, you're going to notice isn't going all the way to the end. The reason for that is that particular statement was only asked of the grade levels where students had opportunities to participate regularly in school-sponsored athletics. Therefore, the count is lower than we saw across the board, which is why that one's not fleshed all the way out in terms of that line. Everything else here, you can see sort of where things are falling.
Trustee Harrell?
On the athletics, and it was only like 7th grade through high school.
Correct.
It wasn't defined any other way, like 6th grade intramurals or anything.
Correct. Yeah, it was school-sponsored athletics that were provided. And again, we filtered out lower grade levels from the seeing that question.
Thanks. I'm pleased, yeah, the food choices. Oh, oops, sorry.
Where's that at?
The very last one.
Okay.
And again, the 25% there, probably not participating in the nutrition program, right? That will also come out in the comments, so we'll talk about it.
And so that was where, because I heard a lot of, from community about, oh, Northside's looking for a 4-day school week now, yay. So that last one says, I believe a 4-day school week with extended school hours and a larger academic year, including a portion of the summer. That was 24, 17, 17. That's interesting. Look, it's almost like even Steven for each.
It's about a 50-50 split.
Yeah. And near the end,
Yeah.
I'll call out all three of the groups. We asked this question of all three stakeholder groups just a little bit differently, and I'll show you that all on one screen so you can see what that looks
So
like.
Gray's like, I don't care if you want 4 days, or yay. I mean, they're
Neutral.
they don't really care.
Right, they're
It's
So-
interesting, especially when it's
So
broken down
17 and
by
24.
levels, elementary, middle, high school.
Oh,
Well, yeah, believe it or not, I was a little bit surprised with the high school response.
interesting.
To Thomas Weary's defense, the school nutrition piece is just challenging. I don't know that I've seen Ace Qualtrics survey, Nick, where school nutrition is just knocking it out of the park.
It's in the bottom 5, pretty much in every district I've
just-
ever worked in. It is.
You've got fair nutritional values that your caloric content, et cetera, the
Yep.
regulations that you're having to work through.
Can't have Domino's
It's
pizza
just-
every day, you know?
It's just hard, just really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially here.
And keep in mind, I know Nick's going to talk about this, but you're seeing district level data at the 80,000 foot view, whereas campuses are going to be able to drill down really granular, and they're going to be able to see their staff, students, and parents' responses.
Across a variety of demographic populations, so they can sort of drill down by anything that we've captured here, yeah. So they'll get real detailed results, absolutely. So I had mentioned earlier that key driver chart, right? So here's the chart related to that idea of either satisfaction, right, on that 11-point scale, or the net promoter. How likely would I be to recommend? So again, we're looking to the top right box in the green as our areas of strength, the areas that were most statistically significantly correlated to how I responded, right? And so you can see the top 3 statements there in green. Happy with the quality of instruction, teachers provide a nurturing environment, teachers at the school set expectations that are appropriate. Again, academically focused, that's what we want to see. The upper left, the red, these are areas that were also very important to families, statistically significantly related to my low ability to recommend, right? So if I didn't recommend, the 2 things that were most important to me were the school supports the social and emotional well-being of my child, and I'm happy with how the district addresses parent concerns. If I felt negatively about those 2 things, I rated the district negatively overall in terms of recommendation. So again, just points us to some areas to maybe dig into a little more and sort of focus some energy on. Open-ended comments, we asked 3 statements of families. What does the school district do well? What does your child's school do well? What can we do to improve your child or children's experience in the district? The district, in their internal data, has all of the raw comments and can see sort of the full array of everything that was listed. I've taken the liberty to summarize for you the key themes that came out of those areas. And so in the area of what do we do well as a district or school, support the physical and emotional safety of students, provide timely and relevant communications, and provide an array of diverse and effective programming for students. Those are the areas that they felt strongest about. On the other side, in terms of opportunities to improve, families were saying we'd like the district to take a more comprehensive approach to bullying prevention. That came up frequently. I would say that in the bulk of the comments, that was well over half of the comments that were coming out were tied in some way back to that concept. Provide more support for operational areas such as building cleanliness and nutrition programming, and then provide additional support for academics, including tutoring and early opportunities for diverse classes. That one was, hey, I have some younger students. I want them to have the same opportunities the upper levels have. Can we bring a little bit of that down here? What could that look like, right? In terms of STEM programming and other things they were talking about.
Just because these could help us form board superintendent, oh, I'm sorry, Bobby.
No, you're fine.
Board superintendent goals, where it says provide support for academics. You just said more STEM programs, more dual language, maybe, but this says tutoring and early opportunities. Is diverse classes STEM and?
So those are 2 separate sort of concepts I've grouped together.
Okay.
The second half of that, the
Very different concepts, so that's why I'm thinking tutoring is very different than STEM and dual language.
So so think of that as upper levels versus lower levels. So at the upper levels, they talked more about additional support for academics. So they said, hey, my child's struggling. It'd be great if there was more tutoring, more resources at home for families, those kinds of things. At the lower levels, they were saying, boy, there's some really cool opportunities later on. We'd love to have some experience with those.
That would be kind of cool to look at too. I mean, all of these would be great to look at forming our goals, right?
Absolutely.
Or informing them.
And we've actually already started, as of this morning, working through our comprehensive needs assessment, incorporating a lot of this data into draft board goals for an upcoming workshop or team building session. So now that's precisely one example, but then, and we'll talk a little bit more and try to answer questions, the actionables that are to follow is really a result of the survey results. So we want to articulate and publish the survey results for the public to see, because I think that follow up as a result of thank you for taking the survey and here are the results, and then now here is the accountability piece that are the actionables as a result of your engagement in the survey that you can expect the district and actions to be taken, which can be incorporated absolutely into board superintendent goals.
So would we choose to do this kind of a survey next year so that we could say if we implemented more after school opportunities for like middle school, sixth graders, so they blah, 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 we would be able to then look at that to see, did it impact in this kind of way, right? In a survey way,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's precisely
been a challenge.
measuring growth going forward. So many times we survey, I say we, you'll take a survey, but you don't even really ever see the results, much less what happens as a result of the 15 minutes that I spent taking
Right.
that survey. And if you want that continued engagement from your community, from your staff, even from your students, they need to be able to see, well, okay, my voice as a result of taking that survey is resulting in cleaner restrooms or better tasting food, and so you try to move the needle as a result of following up, and they'll be more likely to engage and take the survey the following year again.
Yeah, Dr. Kraft's 100% right. That we talk about survey fatigue often as a concern, right? That idea of if I see value in my response, I'll take as many surveys as you want, right? If there's value to it, if there's connection to it. And so that process of here's why we're doing this, your voice matters, here are the results, we're going to share those back, show you this is what we heard, here's what we're doing, here's your opportunities to engage again, right? That cycle drives up that engagement and serves as the basis for really, foundationally strong, relationships with families and students and staff in terms of that cycle. So,
Trustee Salcido?
Yeah, I had a question. You say you had 8,600 participants in that survey?
6,400 in the family survey. Mm-hmm.
Do you know any data whereabouts in the district where the responses are?
Yeah, so we were fairly evenly spread across the schools, which was great. There were some fluctuations in that over time, right? And we had to have some concerted efforts to try to drive up in other areas. But I was very happy with the spread in terms of where that landed.
Thank you.
Yeah, related to your question. So you use 1,100. What do you use for a campus? What number do you need then?
It's a great question. So it depends on the total population, right, and what you're aiming for. So for example, if you had 100, if your pool was 100, you'd have to get to about a 92% response rate to hit that validity level. If you had 250 students, staff, families you were trying to get to, you need to get to about an 80% level. And then if you had 500, you need to get to about a 70% level. So I always tell districts that if you aim for 80%, if that's your threshold as a starting point, as a campus, you're in pretty good shape. If you start to pull out to the district level with bigger populations, now we're talking about that 1,100, and then you're fine after that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the student survey, you can see the response counts here are much larger, and we obviously have a little more control over that audience, right, in terms of being able to get them to respond to a survey. Again, an elementary survey, grades 3 through 5, secondary survey above that. The question's slightly different, and just overall, you can see the volume of questions is different, right? So 15 questions of our elementary students, 34 to the secondary, a little more stamina, right, to be able to take surveys. Obviously, the themes were the same, but the exact wording was different, right, because we toned it down to that level. We're going to start with the elementary level, again, looking at that 70% benchmark is the area we want to start to focus on. You can see here all these statements above 70%, typical at the elementary level. Again, data is really good. It's very strong, but elementary students tend to be a little more positive than secondary students in terms of their response and enthusiasm to certain things that we're asking here. Again, though, I believe I can learn, that self-efficacy, belief in self, 90%. Adults at my schools treat all students with respect, 88%, very high scores. Obviously, we're concerned about the 10% who responded negatively or neutrally, right? But at the end of the day, very good scores in terms of overall performance. We also asked elementary students these statements. Safety, 83%. Happy, 77%. Adults believe I can learn, 93%, right?
That's good.
Again, all above that 70% benchmark. Again, I wouldn't point to any areas of concern here at all. These are very strong. Secondary level, I'm going to preface by saying, typically, particularly at the high school level, students tend to be a little less enthusiastic in terms of these types of surveys, right? Response count very high. The data is valid. It's good data. just know that the overall strongly agree sort of level of agreement is going to be a little lower, okay? So again, we're going to look at that 70% benchmark, knowing that anything above that is very strong at the secondary level. As we start to look to the areas that are a little bit lower, right, I think that there are some things that sort of stand out, and I'll point to these as we talk about them. For example, the second from the bottom, the skills I'm learning in school are relevant to my life, 46%. That's a number we want to see higher, right? Particularly at the high school level, we want students to feel like there's relevance to what they're learning in the classroom, and so something that we would point to and think about there. Obviously, safety stands out as something we want to pay attention to, right? Just over half saying that they strongly agree or somewhat agree they feel safe, which means that the rest do not. And so we want to think about that a little bit, again, with that neutral midpoint. And then, of course, you're seeing more operationally focused things like school nutrition and cleanliness of grounds here as well.
And trustees, it is in the board now. You can pull the briefing. Sorry.
Additional secondary areas. Again, as we start to look to the lower counts, right, the things here that we want to start to look at, again, things operationally, temperature, proud of how the school looks, right? But in addition to that, we want to look above. Adults working at the school help students develop strategies to understand and control their feelings and actions. My teachers often connect what I'm learning to life outside the classroom. That's another parallel statement to the relevance statement, right? Which was at 47, this is at 45. We do that for validity, but in this case, it holds true. Again, things that are interesting, we want to pay attention to, we want to dig into a little bit more.
Well, and I think I am happy, oh, sorry, Bobby.
Oh, you're good. Trustee Harrell?
So the third one, I am happy to be at school. I mean, we've been wrestling with attendance, we've been wrestling, I mean, you know, kids who see relevance in what they're doing and feel like they belong and that they're safe. I'm happy to be at school. That's interesting that that's third from the bottom. Not interesting, I mean, we need to look at it, right?
And then you're right, the drivers of happiness in terms of this survey would be feeling safe, feeling connected, feeling like it's relevant. Yes.
So that's interesting. Okay, good stuff.
And then another set. So that happiness, enjoyment, that's another parallel question set. Again, we do that on purpose for validity. And then broken things get fixed quickly, again, operational. And then students at the school try to work out their disagreements with other students by talking to them, 24%. Open-ended comments. Elementary students and secondary students were asked, what do you like best about your school? And then at the secondary level, we asked a subsequent question, what could your school do to provide a better experience for all students? In terms of categorically, the themes, ironically, across both levels were about the same when you look at the do well, which were they provide a variety of activities, clubs, sports, co-curriculars, things to do, developing positive relationships with teachers, and then fostering positive relationships with peers. So relationally, right, lots of positive comments. Those that had a negative view on the improved side, again, secondary only, improve the food available to students, improve the facilities available to students, create opportunities for all students to feel connected to adults in the building. So a little less connected at the high school level or at the secondary level than at the elementary level. But again, a little more operationally focused. And, you know, I worked with Dr. Kraft before and have said, like, at the end of the day, we want the academic indicators to be very high. We want the social, emotional, sort of relational indicators to be high. The operational indicators we can work on, right? That's a very tangible thing we can sort of focus on and support. And if we see big academic gaps, then that speaks to, boy, there's maybe a bigger need here, right? And that's not the data you have. The data you have here is very strong. Last survey was our staff survey. We know that recruitment and retention of high quality employees is more important than ever. You know how expensive it is to have to replace an employee, right? And go and conduct a search and identify someone to come in. And we want to be a destination district for the best and highest quality staff. And so this sort of survey becomes really important, right, in terms of gauging where are we at, in terms of the vision and the alignment and how people are feeling. You can see here a very good response rate, 9,700. And then 21 multiple choice to open-ended comment questions that provided the opportunity for people to weigh in with some feedback. I raised the benchmark on the staff survey for a couple of reasons. One, it's the group that arguably we have the most vested control over, right, in terms of their experience. Yes, we have a lot of control over the student experience, but admittedly there are factors outside the school that can influence that relationship. Staff come to work for us every single day. We create that work environment. And so we're looking at a higher benchmark there than we do with families and students, which is 80%. Again, looking at your data across the board, very, very strong, especially given that respondent group, right? A lot of favorability, not a lot of neutrality, not a lot of negative. And as you start to look at some of the statements, right? I receive information from my principal or department supervisor that's timely and relevant. I have access to the resources I need. I feel supported. I have the training I need. I'm encouraged by the leaders in my building. All very strong, right? And we know it's the backbone of engagement when those things are in place. Additional statements, again, as we start to move down the continuum. I'm proud to work for the school district, 88%. School's a safe place to work, 88%. My work gives me a feeling of personal accomplishment, 86%. Very strong indicators. We do have two. I'm going to talk to the 4-day work week in a little bit. You can sort of set that one aside. Broken things at my school building get fixed quickly, 63%, which sort of reinforces what we heard from students. Again, to Dr. Kraft's earlier point, those are always areas in schools that are lower and things that we can be focusing on. Some additional statements. Leaders are accessible to me. I can report safety concerns. My principal supervisor cares about me. Again, the relational side of this, all very strong. Two lowest areas here. I'm comfortable voicing my ideas and opinions even if they're different from others, 77%. Again, very strong within the margin of error. I receive recognition from my principal or departmental supervisor for excellent work. Recognition also is frequently one of the lowest areas I see in employee engagement surveys, and it's because we don't know how to do it very well. We're not good at it. It's not sort of natural to us. We do a lot of celebrating, right? We do a lot of sort of highlighting the things that are really fun experiences or things that we're seeing. But true recognition means that we have to identify and align the work that staff is doing with our goals, our continuous improvement goals, our strategic goals, so that if we're recognizing someone who's modeling after those goals, that's true recognition, right, for work we're trying to drive forward. And so it's just, again, something that schools naturally aren't good at. And so that, and again, still very high, but obviously something to sort of think about and work through.
Especially when we're talking retention, right?
Culture.
I'm surprised it's 72.
Yeah.
Percent today's.
And obviously, you know, again, to Dr. Kraft's earlier point, at the school level, those will vary, right?
Trustee Freeman?
I have a question. You know, certainly when we survey staff want to answer honestly regarding this. They had assurance that this was completely anonymous.
Thank you.
And
Yeah. And we always use the word confidential when we talk
Right.
about it, right? But yeah, no individual responses were able to be identified. There was no, we set response count thresholds so that if we were looking at a particular department and there were less than 20 responses, they're not visible. So we take a number of steps to protect the confidentiality of staff.
because that's certainly important.
And they were sent a, I should say disclaimer, they were sent a preview of expectations that this is not it's not for evaluative purposes, it's really to provide feedback input for development of action plan and improvement going forward.
It's also been my experience that if staff are feeling uncomfortable or unsure, we start to see a spike in the neutral. So rather than, if I'm feeling negative, go into the agree or strongly agree or somewhat agree, I would move into the neutral and just say I don't agree nor disagree. And we didn't see that here, right? We saw concentrations on either end. So.
Okay, Trustee Duran?
So I had a question about the broken down results per school. Do the school leaders get that data?
So there's a dynamic dashboard internally that all of the school leaders will have access to or have access to. When they log into that dashboard, they can see the district aggregate results and they can see their school results. And they're all logging into the same dashboard, and then they can further filter from there. So yes, each school leader will have their results.
So
And
be-
departmental leaders, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, and Nick will actually be with principals, directors tomorrow at our Thursday, at our leadership meeting.
I like that, so they have that data this summer to do their strategic planning for next year and include some of these comments. The other question I had for you is statistical. Why not a Likert scale, and why did you pick the 1 through 10 for this survey?
All of the statements were on a 5-point Likert scale, with the exception of the two that I showed you, which were
okay.
those net promoters,
Okay,
which were on the 11-point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Open-ended comments for staff. 2 questions. What is your school or department doing to make Northside a great place to work? What can we do to improve your experience working in the district? On the do well side, foster effective collaboration, provide aligned and relevant resources, and administrators provide effective leadership. I think that came out clearly in the data sets. On the improve side, provide increased pay and benefits, improve and better align professional development opportunities to make sure that that time is best used. We referenced earlier the 4-day school week, work week. Here were the specific statements that were asked of the various groups regarding that 4-day experience. And then you can see the percent agreement or percent favorability below that, with staff coming in the highest at 68%, students at 59%, and then families at 42%. And again, you can see the specific statements there.
So students, staff.
So, a little bit of context. So this question was asked simply because I was curious. And in conversations, a district the size of Northside, there's no possible way that this could ever happen. Well, keep in mind the timing of this question was asked as we were on the footsteps of beginning a legislative session. And so I felt at the time that it was really important that, well, we were all of the assumption that there's just absolutely no way a 4-day work week would potentially even be possible, which we'll talk about the data, and I don't necessarily disagree, but the question had never been asked, or at least to my knowledge had never been asked. The other piece of this, though, was as more and more districts were in the process of implementing a 4-day week for staff retention or efficiencies to be gained, various reasons, I felt like that it was important that a community, particularly of this size, understood that this is not out of the realm of possibilities. If there's not some significant legislative support in the future, I wouldn't necessarily rule anything out, any option out, and take anything off the table, particularly if it's going to provide fiscal efficiencies. So that was the intent of asking this question in a manner as more or less, yes, to receive the feedback, but then also begin a very real conversation. Because there will be implications and have been implications for communities that have implemented the 4-day week in regards to what does childcare look like on Friday? How do businesses and industry function with this need? And so, Nick, thank you for entertaining this, because this was a custom question that we, I think, received some valuable input and data.
Agreed. This, and you didn't ask on this one, but other districts will ask start time surveys often, particularly at high school level, right, to sort of gauge start times and those kinds of things. So yeah, and it's almost always split down the middle.
One thing, and I'm trying to think if it was in the New York Times or Ed Week, but it was talking about teachers or staff are already, in a way, taking 4-day weeks because of the Friday, Monday absences. It's not just student absentees, but teacher absentee rates have increased in the past couple of years too, which is a different way of doing business too, for a lot of reasons.
That survey is forthcoming next. And in fact, we just received the preliminary results, and what you will see is the correlation between what's determined to be chronic absenteeism, student chronic absenteeism, 10 or more absences, but then also how it's correlated to staff chronic absenteeism. Principals will have this data, I believe we said, beginning of July at the leadership meeting. So you'll have the opportunity to review that data, which is more of a heat map looking at a variety of indicators, neighborhood indicators, of course, academic achievement indicators, pretty granular. But that piece, to your point, is pretty interesting, pretty eye-opening. So, and that'll be, like I say, presented also to leadership this summer.
Trustee Durant?
I mean, it would be a good hypothesis to test it out in summer school if we're not already doing 4-day summer school. We do it at work at Alamo Colleges in the summer to reduce efficiencies and to accommodate for folks taking their time off during the summer break at a community college level. We go to a 4-day work week beginning June 1st for a few months. So that would be, if we were
Yeah.
gonna test it out, that would be good timing during the summer school where there's less risk.
We'll have, if, again, I'll never say never. I've learned that a long time ago. We'll have to have a lot of runway, though, from just a communication, prepping, planning standpoint. So I believe we may have a media outlet here. Northside ISD, for the record, is not transitioning to a 4-day week next year. Our calendar for next year and the following year are set. But I'm not going to rule it out of the rim of possibilities.
Especially with legislative issues the way they are concerned. Especially with legislative issues. I mean, we've got to look at funding all the time. So, but yeah, runway in Northside, it's like moving the Titanic. We're so large. Turning on a dime would be.
A lot of planning.
Yep. I just lost.
Trustee Freeman?
Yeah, for clarification, don't we have 4-day weeks in the summer?
No, we do for some summer
Middle and high school.
programs, yes, at secondary. And we've done a whole host of different ways, but we do have some 5-day.
Okay,
Valerie said secondary does 4 days. Middle and high.
I thought we did. Thank you.
So it's already kind of going on, right?
Yeah, but elementary mostly 5 days, and we have a whole host of enrichment that does 5 days.
But that's been like that for as long as I can remember. My kids were, that was a long time ago.
Some final thoughts. Obviously, I shared along the way my perspective, right, on some areas to focus on or think about. But in terms of just some 3 themes to sort of take away, one is on the relationship side, obviously belonging, collaboration, connectedness, vital to school success, right? And so in the areas where that's strong, continue to focus on that, see what's working, build on it. In the areas where there's some, maybe some lower scores, let's identify what's going on there and see how we can continue to foster those relationships. As Dr. Kraft said earlier, communication, big key to that. And then operational concerns, right, as Dr. Kraft said, pops up in just about every time we do these surveys, right? Everybody cited some concerns with some aspect of operations, nutrition services, cleanliness of buildings, those repair of items that were broken, those kinds of things. And then lastly, I just wanted to underscore what Dr. Kraft had said earlier, which is we like to talk about moving from project to program. That idea of we've administered this survey one time in the fall. How do we now move that to a more comprehensive listening program, right? Where we're providing multiple opportunities for feedback, for stakeholders to sort of weigh in on the things we're doing differently to see if they're working and if they're improving, right? And then we build that over time with a solid communication strategy so that we're sharing all of that information back. And, you know, it sounds like you're moving in that direction, which is great. So I'll sort of end my portion there. If there are any additional questions, though, I'd be happy to address them.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the board? I have one.
Yes, sir.
So again, it's nationwide, correct? Who's the best? And the reason, and then I'm partially joking, and it'd be really nice to see. And I don't know, for example, it may be out of date, but like Boston Public Schools, Fairfax County, have they participated? And
so everybody's surveys are a little bit different, right? So when we talk about benchmarking, themes are the same, but people will identify their own sort of questions in the way they frame things.
Yeah.
And I would say that point in time, those school districts are always shifting. So the districts that are sort of on top one time of year may not be on top in the spring, or right, and so we're sort of always moving around. And so I wouldn't want to point to specific districts and say these are the sort of top 3 that I've worked with. Also because I don't work with every district in the country, right? So I can't sort of provide you with that level of benchmark. I will tell you, I work with a lot of districts in Texas. Your data is very high, if not top 3 in the districts I work with in Texas in terms of outcomes.
so you're saying, make sure I understand what you're saying. So you said really there isn't any consistency in terms of the top. I'm really surprised by that.
Yeah, districts are always doing, making efforts to improve, right? And so they're sort of shifting, and sometimes their staff are really engaged, but the students are dropping back a little bit, or the family, right? And so you're sort of always recalibrating around things. And think about sort of the turmoil of the last 5 to 6 years and the impact that that's had, right, on, sort of being consistent as a school district. It's changed over time.
Okay.
So.
You got out of it, but I'm sure somebody.
I always encourage districts benchmark against yourself, right? Like you want to set your baseline and look to improve.
No, well, I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I'll tell you why, and I'll be quiet on it. I mean, really, I know a lot of times we do it, and you show at the beginning sort of average per se. I always say, hey, who's the very best, and then what your delta is, et cetera, is something that I always try to look for lately, especially. But anyway, we just have different ways of looking at that. Okay.
I appreciate
Trustee
it.
Freeman?
Now, I'm curious, do you work with charter schools?
Oh, I do work with charter schools, yep, and private schools.
Interesting. Wonder where their data is. Along those lines, you know.
Nick, we're very competitive around here.
Exactly.
I don't know if you picked up on that.
Much different priorities, let's just put it that way. If I'm surveying in a private school or even a charter, right, it's all about re-enrollment. It's all about intent to re-enroll. So there's early surveying happening in the fall, and they want to identify like who are our potential families that are going to leave us in a year and those kinds of things, and then look to intervene. It's a much different approach than public schools to sort of the data collection process.
Well, you already said we're an outlier, so.
That's true, in a positive way.
Trustee Harrell?
I just love how when you were, that last slide just really nails the whole, and I'm trying to think, there's a whole body of research, and we all know it, about how important relationships are, but sometimes we need reminders, right? And that's just such a refreshing reminder that there's a lot in this about how powerful relationships are, and belonging and collaboration and all those things that sometimes get put aside because we're doing other things. So, I mean, I could see a lot of neat things coming at the district level and campus level around, you know, number 2 is kind of, you know, food and repairs and all that. Those are easy fixes, and those are ones that are in our control. Relationships are too. And so refocusing folks. And then I love number 3, because I think taking action on these, it's not just a nice survey. We're going to do something about it. And
We
then
need
we'll
to
come
show
back
some follow-up.
Yes, and see, are we improving in these areas? So, right?
And it'll be important for the campuses and departments too, as well, because
Exactly.
that will be obviously a much smaller population. So you'll see this again, like I say, through the incorporation of board superintendent goals, and then actionables, particularly as our district improvement plan process continues on.
And the campus improvement plans.
Yeah, and then like I say, there's going to be a learning threshold survey analysis, I should say. It's really just a data pool analysis, not a survey, that will be forthcoming later, a little bit later this summer. That's also going to be pretty rich information. So.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Nick.
Yeah, this is good information. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
really
thank
do.
you all
It's
for your
great for
time.
us.
Thanks for your
Thank
thoroughness.
you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we'll go ahead to our, it's good to see the board engaged in that one. That's really good conversation. As this one will be too, our draft TASB advocacy resolution.
Yes, sir. So these were discussed briefly in our last policy meeting. Wanted to go ahead and pull the 2022 approved TASB resolutions, submitted TASB resolutions along with 23. So what you see as far as the draft consolidated 22-23, both 2022, 2023 resolutions are the ones that I felt like are still very pertinent. These are to be submitted to TASB no later than June 15th. And so we wanted to go ahead and provide these. Again, there have been some slight modifications to a few, which I believe you'll see highlighted up on page, I believe it's 3 or 4. But in large part, they're still very much intact. Yeah, number 13 and number 14, and we made some slight modifications. But they're pretty well intact, keeping in mind that with this last 88th legislative session, there wasn't just a whole lot addressed in any of these regards. And again, I feel like that many of these matters are still very pertinent. So this is a starting point, as I mentioned in the policy meeting. These can be modified. These can be amended. We can add to. And like I say, the intent was to bring these back at the 28th, May 28th meeting in preparation for submission to TASB by the 15th, the due date.
Okay, Trustee Freeman?
Yeah, just a couple things. Actually, a couple questions for Dr. Harrell. Dr. Harrell, your committee, and I know the cornerstone principles have not been approved yet, but did you all discuss those? Any changes, forecasts that that you could even tell us about that we might need to know about?
I don't know the answer to the second part of your question, but as soon as I get the summary, I'll give it to everybody.
Yeah, I assume that that's public. I
don't know.
I don't know that either.
So-
depending on what you discuss.
Yeah, I'll find out.
Okay, and then to the board, one of these resolutions that we had was modified in the delegate assembly, and I don't have the copy of that. And Dr. Harrell, you could probably pull that up, and because you have access to back things, but we might be open to maybe changing one of these resolutions in accordance with how that got modified, yes, in the delegate assembly. Or maybe we don't. I just can't remember exactly how it was worded.
Subject, content area was?
Yes, I do. Corinne, you were there with me. I can't. Do you remember how that got?
Which one are we talking?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I spoke to it a couple times, and I'm not sure. But we'll look for it.
I'll ask Kelly. She can
I don't know if Kelly. Oh well.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll find it. But let's look at. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Trustee Harrell?
Yeah, I had a question on number 9. Do we still get an IR label?
Yes.
We still get, so you can be a D or F school, or is it just F schools? But we still get improvement required?
I don't, is it?
Within the federal accountability.
Excuse me.
Federal accountability, but this this document is for the state.
Well, but if you fall into improvement required at the federal level, you're going to be probably a D or an F. You're going to be in comprehensive
It'd be
need.
at least a D.
Well, I was just trying
support.
to see how we could shorten some of this.
Yeah, we can
Because-
modify some of the language.
Yeah, I just kind of think, they get slammed with so much. What are our top 10?
Yeah.
That we're going to pound hard with, and just looking for ways that that one's kind of included in the labeling. So
Okay.
just thinking. That was it.
Okay. Trustee Duran?
So I'm looking at number 16. I like that mental health of student and staff. One thing that I'd like us to consider, besides the last statement, mental health becoming a priority throughout public education and funding must reflect the actual cost of meeting the vast need for related services via adequate staffing levels and/or training. Because I just completed a training that's called Trauma Informed Care through Texas State. And it was so helpful, and some folks that didn't know what those early signs were of mental health issues that I felt was very informative, not as a requirement, but as just an option for teachers and staff and school leaders to take that training and at least have the education component of identifying some mental health for not just students, but for adults. And it was specific for K through 12 and adults, but there's so many free trainings through Texas State that maybe we could at least put on the radar for continuing education or professional development opportunities for teachers to be able to opt in to take those trainings, especially if you're not a counselor already and you haven't been formally trained as a mental health professional.
So Texas State is offering the trauma.
It's called Trauma Informed Care. That one
Oh,
I
I'm very
just
familiar.
sent
It's a
Monica that it was
great
free
training.
for me, and so it was full. I will disclaim that it was a full for like 2 months.
Yeah.
But if we can ask them to come to us and give it to us at one of our summer developmental trainings, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Unless y'all tell me, only y'all three TASB, tell me differently. So Northside will, say it every year, typically will submit the most by far. So they do, when they see ours, they do allocate the resources to it. So related to Carol's remark, if there's some we see as combined, it would help them out, or if we had, if we say, hey, we truly need this many, then that helps them out too from a staffing standpoint.
like I say, and this is just a first
initial, yeah.
draft. So if you have other comments, if you're reading through them, if you'll let Monica know, like I say, we can get these polished up and brought back on the 28th for board consideration well in advance of that 15th date. And we will. We'll try to maybe refine, simplify, consolidate, shorten. I know that brevity is sometimes blissful, so
Okay.
we'll work on it.
All right, good. So everybody take a look, and we'll revisit this one at the end of the month. All right. So anything further then?
Yes, sir.
This is the called meeting? Okay. So the Board of Trustees, beginning at, do y'all need a little time? No. Okay. We got one opinion. 8:49 PM. We'll convene a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Government Code Section 551. To identify, discussion take place on the items that were identified. So. Board of Trustees beginning at 8:16 will convene back in open meeting. Action to take place on the items that were discussed and listed. Is there a motion to come before the board? Oh, you did. Oh, I took you off. Trustee Howard?
I move that we approve the administrative appointments as presented in executive session.
I second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, move to second that we approve the administrative appointments as discussed and closed. All those in favor, signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed?
Two what?
Nay, 2 nays.
You say aye? Okay. Oh, nay.
I thought I heard you say A.
Nay, aye, whatever.
Okay. All right. Motion carried.
Do you need to know?
4-2.
Yeah,
One or
usually it'll
two.
be for the one item, the one you mentioned.
The one I mentioned in executive session.
Who is that?
So it would be,
So
I had a
Saldana
concern
is a
also
no
about-
as well?
it's for item B.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me, can we,
It's item B.
yeah, but we got, it's a little more complicated. Let me just make sure we're clear. So, your votes, go ahead, David.
Well, the nays for the,
So A and B, the ones you're saying nay for, right? All right.
A and B
So
for,
he is A and B nay, and the rest C2, you're okay with?
yeah.
Okay, and you're nay on B, and the rest you're,
There is no A.
it's just B.
The first two, that's the idea.
Right.
Correct.
no, they're listed A2, whatever.
Around the north side.
I'm opposed to the one
B.
that I spoke.
Yeah, that's fine.
That would be B.
B, okay,
We
so
noted,
two Bs.
yeah, exactly.
Two B, so B, so A was 1, 2, 3, 5, 1. B was 4, 2, and then 6, 0 for the rest.
Yeah, we need to have it listed this way.
What's that?
Because B is, that's the one they're saying no to, so just in case.
Is that this man Brandeis one? Okay, I put it on that
Yeah,
one,
okay,
so.
then what's A?
There, yeah, it's just the
So I
time.
think that
Yeah,
completes our meeting, so
Gotcha.
it ends at 8:20. Telephone at 8:15. And